Hello and welcome back to the Junior Developer Link. Today we're going to be talking about actually building real world projects. And with me to discuss, I've got John Crickett. How you doing, John?
Hi, Chris. I'm good, thank you. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. So like probably a lot of people, I've found you on LinkedIn, which I think you have a pretty solid following on there. But for anyone that doesn't know you, just tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of what you're working on at the moment.
So, I've been doing software engineering for over 20 years, and right now my main focus is coding challenges. It's a newsletter that helps software developers find real world projects that they can use to practice coding and level up.
Fantastic. So I guess let's jump straight into it. Like what actually are the coding challenges?
So, the coding challenges are 46 so far. Projects that are based off real world software, so something from some of the Unix command line tools like grep or WC, your cat, head, through to things like memcached or Redis and building a full server. So you understand how those software applications are built, what it takes to build them, and you've got some real world projects to practice. So instead of doing leak code or doing little toy examples from a book, you build some real software and actually get proper experience of what it takes to build a moderately sized application.
For sure. And I guess why are real world applications so useful?
They're really useful because when you're learning something new, like a new programming language, or you're learning to be a software engineer, if we take the typical kind of book exercise that you get, or the exercise you get at university or a boot camp, they're very small. They're like a function to do this, or like a simple data structure. You don't see how it fits in the context of a real world. You don't see how that works as building something, getting to GitHub, thinking about things like CI, thinking about testing the application. So these are full-sized projects that you might do in a job, and they give you that experience. It's just bigger. It's more like a capstone project that you might do, or full. If you're doing a university degree, you might do it as part of your project. But they're less academically focused and more real world, and they give you a chance to practice the skills that you might not get otherwise. So, if you build, say, the Redis server, you learn about network protocols, you learn about building a TCP server, you learn about concurrency, you learn about locking, you learn about all these different things that it takes to build a high performance server, how to optimize it, how to optimize performance. Things that you don't get when you just build a little function that's in a book to search for a linked list or something.
Yeah, for sure. And you say you got 46 different ones now. Are they quite wide ranging in terms of someone comes in, they should, if they're focused on a particular area, they should do a particular project, or should they be doing a few to get like a breadth of knowledge? Like how is it kind of set up with the 46 that you've got?
So there are 46 at the moment. There's a new one published every week, and they vary between things that I've been doing for 20 odd years myself. So, like the compression tool is one that I first did in the late 90s, shortly after I graduated. Others are more recent, like at the moment I'm working on a Docker one, which will be available in the next week or two. So, using more modern tools and based on that. And they vary from being very system level, like building a Redis server, very low level networking, like building a DNS resolver or building a trace route tool, through to being quite high level front end based, like so building a web based Spotify client. So you can come in and pick what you're trying to learn. So I started publishing these last year because I was learning Rust. I've used them again over the last few months to learn Go. So I've picked out ones that help me do what I want to learn my area, to learn those languages. Other people have picked them out, as I say, to focus on a front end project. Other people have picked them out because they want to focus more on, say, the DevOps and infrastructure side. So they're building things like the URL shortener. I have a couple of games in there. Tetris was in the news recently, so I did one around Tetris. A lot of people have enjoyed that. And that's been, again, an introduction to computer games and the logic in there, and front end skills for some people. So there's something for everyone. The best thing there is to jump in, think about what your learning goals are, and pick the projects that best suit that. And they're all tagged, so you can search. If you want to learn networking, you can find all the ones that are tagged as networking. You can find the ones that are tagged as front end or back end. And the world's your oyster, so to speak. Choose your own adventure.
Amazing. I mean, hell of an advertising campaign to be using your own things to teach yourself. It's a great to see that. Like if you've developed it through the way that you were trying to learn something ages ago, and then like you're still using it now. Like, I mean,
It's the
that's
way, yeah, it's the way I've always learned how to do software. If I wanted to learn something new, I set about building a real world project with it. And as I say, I've been doing that since the late 1990s. It's the way I've always approached. When I was discussing this with somebody last year, he suggested I share it, so I thought, why not? I was hoping that maybe 1,000 people would be interested by the end of 2023. Instead, we had nearly 100,000 subscribers to the newsletter. So it's proved popular. It resonates with people.
yeah. But if this is something that you've been doing for years and years and years, like why isn't this more common for people to be teaching themselves by building these types of applications? Is it a lack of like resources or instructions, or is it just like that's not the way that things are taught now?
So it's not the way that things are taught, because it takes a lot of effort to design a project like this. It takes a lot of effort to think about it and put it in. So and they're quite big projects. They're quite involved. So some people have spent 6, 7, 8 weeks just building one of the challenges. So that's just typically too big for your average university, college, or boot camp. And then the flip side of that, there are a number of engineers like myself who've been using this approach to learn, but we've been figuring out our own projects and doing our own things, and some of those become open source projects. But for a lot of people, the difficulty is thinking of projects and thinking about how to break it down, and thinking of what to do, and getting that analysis paralysis of thinking, well, could build this, could build that. There's lots of shiny things. Which one do I do? So there's a mixture of reasons. And again, for a lot of, as the market's becoming more junior, we've got a lot more junior people coming in. The market's growing, which is a great thing. A lot of these people haven't been exposed to that. They've been, should we say, a more accelerated education as we try and get more people into the industry. And maybe haven't had as much exposure. There's a lot of focus on web development these days, so they're maybe not come across embedded software, not looked at systems programming. I'm still, finding that some people haven't heard of some of the Unix command line tools that have been around for 40, 50 years that are incredibly powerful. So, it's introducing them a lot of different things that they weren't aware of, which is great, very, very useful, because even if they don't do those challenges, they've now learned about those tools that they can use to better do their job. So there's lots of different reasons, but it's something that resonates with people, hence the very fast growth that we've seen over the last nearly 10 months.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess who can, from like a level perspective, who can actually benefit from doing them? Is it quite a wide array of people that you've got?
Yeah, absolutely everyone. I'd say about 60% of the leaders that come back to me are junior developers, and are getting that. The other 40%, about 30%, are mid to staff plus level engineers, and about 10% are CTOs, engineering managers, or other people who for some reason are interested in coding. So they're all using it. So it's quite a mixture, hence why there are challenges at different levels, and people are getting different things out of it. And again, like I say, I'm using it to learn different programming languages. Some people are using it to sharpen their front-end skills. Some people are front-end developers, maybe wanting to learn a bit more about back-end or systems programming. So lots of people make use of it. And like I say, it's very choose your own. You can pick which level suits you, and you can probably come back to it, like I've done with learning Rust last year and now learning Go. You can reuse it again, and the other benefit of that is tackling the same challenges over and over again in different languages exposes you to the different strengths and weaknesses of them. So there's different idioms that are typical in each. So
Are they completely language agnostic, the way that you actually log into the test to start with?
yeah, they are completely language agnostic. You can solve the challenges in, well, I can't think of a programming language you couldn't solve any of the challenges in. And people have done them in Swift, Java, C#, C, C++, Rust, JavaScript, TypeScript, Flutter, Dart. I think I've seen one in a Camel, in Haskell, in Clojure, and I've probably forgotten several others. So
Yeah, amazing.
There's a GitHub repo that's linked from the site with shared solutions, and there's a vast range of different solutions that have been shared there.
Yeah, for sure. How are you coming up with a new one every single week? That must be. Like, do you have a full-time job as well, or is it?
I do have a full-time job, yes. As I say, I've been doing this for 20 odd years, so I've used a lot of this concepts and a lot of these things myself. There's also a long list of things that I wanted to learn. Like, I've been curious for a while, how does Docker actually work under the hood? So that's been a great one to look at and go, I'm going to pick this apart and figure out how it works, so then I can turn that into a coding challenge. So I've been doing that for the last couple of weeks, and that will be available soon. There's a fairly active Discord server, so people are suggesting ideas in there. People email me with different ideas, what they're interested in, and there's a lot of fun stuff in tech. There's plenty of material out there for me to go, well, that's interesting, I'd like to learn that and figure out how it works. I'll turn that into a challenge. Some, like I say, Tetris was very topical. It was in the news with somebody beating Tetris, so that seemed like a fun one. And my son's doing A-level computer science at the moment as well, so he's dabbled with writing computer games in Python, so kind of met multiple needs and multiple interests there.
Yeah. Is that completely by accident, or is he kind of like following after you a little bit?
I wouldn't say quite by accident, more in frustration.
Yeah.
He wanted to do A-level sports, but none of his sports are supported by A-level sports, so in frustration he picked a different course that suits him.
Fair enough. And why are these challenges particularly relevant to sort of our audience, junior developers?
So at the moment, as I understand it, I'm a bit older, I'm not a junior developer, but as I understand it at the moment, a lot of junior developers are struggling to get into the industry. It's a very difficult market at the moment, probably the hardest I've seen in the last 20 odd years. So to break into the market and to be ready for when the market does pick up, which I'm sure it will in the next year or so, they need to stay current. They need to be setting themselves apart. They need to be ready for interviews, and software engineer is something that you need to keep practicing. You need to keep doing it to stay aware and stay ready. Much like interviewing, in fact, you need to keep doing it. So for junior developers, they should look at how can they gain some new skills from this, how can they keep the skills they've got current, so that when they go to an interview, they can talk about the things they've done, they can talk about it, and they can answer questions on, say if you're a JavaScript developer with front-end focus, you can talk about, I've used React, or I've used Vue, and this is how I've used it in a project. This is what I understand about it, and you can answer questions about it in the interview. Where if you're struggling for 6-7 months now and not actively writing code, particularly as somebody that's new to the industry, it will be very easy to get rusty and lose that edge. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You can't get work because you're not current, but you're not getting work experience because you're not in the industry. So it's good to use it to practice that. For some people, it may give them something as a project that they can put on their CV and talk about. I honestly haven't really seen a portfolio of work making much difference for people unless you're very graphic design heavy. That doesn't happen so much in my experience, but at least having a project you can mention in your CV and maybe you can talk about in the interview again will help, because you can show that you are passionate, you're interested, and you'll have something to actually talk about, the challenges and problems that you overcame. So that to me is a benefit that a junior developer will see.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the majority of it, particularly coming out of boot camps, like they've worked on one project, like typically as a team with like sort of 3 or 4 other people, and that's their one thing that they have is like, I'm now a developer, like this, and that one thing to talk about. So if you can go and do even one of these things on your own, and it's a real world like application, it'd be quite different to probably what the other people have that have graduated from even like the same boot camp as you, like to have something completely different to actually demonstrate.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll set you apart. You've done that bit more. You've shown that you're engaged and you're taking it a bit further. And the challenges are very much challenges. I lay out, this is a problem, this is your goal. I don't tell you how to do it. I might give you some background and context and say to, for example, if you're building a DNS resolver, here's a DNS protocol, here's the RFC that specifies it, here's some of the bits you need to know about the header, but you are left to figure it out for yourself. So you will have something that you have shown that you can go and build some real-world software against a real specification, and you can, what's the word I'm looking for? Be self-directed. But as you say in the boot camp, if you're doing it in a team of 3 or 4 people, you don't know who did what, you don't know how that scales. You've been very much given the projects on a plate and probably shown this is how you do it. This will show that next level of self-direction.
For sure. Do you need to be like a particular like minimum level to do these projects?
No, there are different levels and different complexities to the projects. So they are tagged as beginner and intermediate and advanced. So if you're new to the industry and have no professional experience, you will probably find the intermediate and advanced ones challenging, probably beyond your level, or a very frustrating stretch. But they might be worth trying for that. That's how you grow. But everybody who has ever written any program that's more than about 10 lines long in any language should be able to jump into the beginner challenges and make some progress. And if you get genuinely stuck, come and join the Discord server. There are a bunch of people there who are active and helping out that will look to pair programming in different languages and are collaborating. So, again, there's lots of opportunities to find other people to network with. Or reach out to some of the people that you went to college, boot camp, or university with and say, let's take this together and let's build something more. Keep our skills current.
Yeah, I love that. So you've actually got a community of people that will like help people that are stuck on their projects, or is
Yeah.
it is it just you?
No, it's not just me. There are, I'm just trying to look, I think it's around about 3,500 people on the Discord server now
Wow.
that, sharing different ideas, and there's channels for Java, Python, Go, Rust, C++, JavaScript, C Sharp, and C. And there's been some effort there for people to kind of collaborate and share ideas and pair up. So yeah, I'm occasionally active on there, but there are other people that are active and helping each other out. There are also there's GitHub repo as I mentioned with a bunch of shared solutions, so you can go there and look and see how other people in the communities are solving them. So there's help with that. There's other
Yeah.
ways of, if you get really stuck, reach out and ask for some help.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess how do the solutions that you put together, or the challenges that you put together, sorry, how do you think they differ to the way that organizations are testing sort of junior and mid-level engineers? Are they quite similar to your typical sort of like take-home test, or are they also quite different?
So the emphasis here is on learning rather than testing. So there's a different approach and a different structure. I would say that from a lot of the take-home tests that I've seen, they are narrower in scope and they're far more directed. So they will say, you will build an API that has this endpoint and does this. And that perhaps makes it easier to mark them, but it gives you less scope to really dig into it, understand it, and pursue what interests you and learn the bits that you want. And again, they're typically aiming at a take-home test to be like 1 to 3 hours of work. Some of these challenges, I say, people have spent 4-5 weeks doing them. You are building potentially a full real-world application that, could, probably shouldn't for most people, but could go into production. So they're more complex and more in depth, and I leave the final step is always some of the things you can do to take it further. So the URL shortener challenge, for example, there are dozens of businesses that have built around URL shorteners that have found a little niche in that market. If you build the full URL shortener challenge, stick a payment screen and a marketing screen on there, and you effectively have another business in that area. So you can take them as far as you want, where the coding challenges that you get for a take-home test will be focused on that 1 to 3 hours of work and very, very much more constrained.
Yeah, I think even in the way that they're kind of given out, it tends to be use this language to do this bit and use this to do this bit. Like, whereas it sounds like yours are much more relevant to how you would operate inside of an organization. If this is something that needs doing, like go and figure out how to do this thing, as opposed to jump through these hoops.
Yes, absolutely. It's very much kind of, here's the goal, here's the specifications, or here's some, constraints to work within, but you go and figure it out for yourself.
For sure. And I guess, like you said, it's a very difficult market for juniors at the moment, particularly people that are looking for sort of first time jobs and things like that. So outside of obviously doing your projects, like I think that is a huge differentiator because one of the biggest things is the sheer volume of people that are applying to sort of different roles and things like that. To have something like this will really make you stand out. But do you have any other tips for sort of juniors that are looking to break into the software engineering world?
I think one of the things that is consistent across a lot of people that struggle to find work is focusing too much on the technologies and a bullet point list of things that you may have done rather than focusing on the outcomes, focusing on what difference you made. So, somewhat harder as a junior developer if you've particularly got no commercial experience, but for everyone at every level, we need to focus on what did you do and what was the outcome? How did that improve things? So, again, maybe as a junior developer, you can talk about more rather than I built a to-do app as part of my project. I worked on a team, built a to-do app. It was this size. We tested it at this scale, and the outcome was that we did this. Maybe, you know, I think another thing to do is that there are still lots of small businesses, or lots of charities, a lot of open source projects that also need help. Try and find somewhere there. If you're really struggling to find paid work, reach out to some of those and offer to do some freelance work, offer to do something pro bono, get involved in an open source project. Again, these things are still real world, either real world paid work or real world pro bono work or contributions to open source. It's still contributing code to something in the real world. Again, that will differentiate you and help you stand out. So those are all good. And in many ways, if you're really, really stuck, the next thing to do is to start looking at what else is in the industry. I posted on LinkedIn the other day that my actual first software development job, I didn't apply for a software development job. I actually, in my first summer holidays from university, went and applied to one of the UK's first ISPs to work on the help desk, just because that they had a job advertised locally in the paper. I turned up for the interview. I was in such a state with hay fever that I would not have been able to speak to anyone on the phone. Would have been completely unintelligible, and they'd have just listened to me sneezing and wheezing all day, so it would have been a disaster. But the manager there who was hiring talked to me and said, why are you applying for this? And I said I was doing a computer science degree and just wanted to get some experience somewhere in the industry. And fortunately for me, he said, well, we could probably use another programmer. We've only got one guy that can code. So he took me up there and I met the rest of the team and said, well, yeah, come and be a programmer for the next 3 months of your holidays. So that was my first job. And it was through applying to work on the help desk. So again, consider adjacent things. There are other parts of tech like product management, project management, being a tester that maybe are less competitive, maybe are less exciting and interesting, but will still get you some real world experience, still get you an income, which for many people is quite useful. And once you're in the building, it's always a lot easier to apply for another job. And when I say in the building, even if you're working remotely, once you're in the company, it's a lot easier to look for an internal transfer and to start using that network that you can build. And you never know who you'll meet on Slack or in the corridors or whatever that you can talk to, and start building a network, building some mentors, and you can use that to transfer later if you want.
Sure.
Again, if you're new to the industry, hopefully you've got a long, 40-year career ahead of you. If you spend 6 months doing something that's not perfect but gets you that first experience in front of the door, it may well be worth it, particularly when the market the way it is at the moment.
Yeah.
And you'll be better positioned in 6-12 months' time when the market improves.
Yeah, for sure. And testing's one that I've seen a lot. I've placed a number of people into kind of testing roles because they love people that can actually code in testing roles because they're just much better at it and have a much more thorough sort of like understanding of it. And then, like you said, one of the biggest hurdles for like an entry level developer is to prove, like you said, can you be trusted to go away and work on this solution on your own? Like, are you reliable? Like all of these basic things, which you can show those skills in any role, like at that company. You said you work on a help desk for 6 months and then be like, oh, actually, I would rather be doing that thing. They already know you're a good person. Like, then they've just got to be like, well, can you do that? Do we need that? Like, then, yeah, you would make sense over everyone else outside of this company to do that job because we know you and we trust you and we like you, hopefully. So like, it makes sense to go through that route. And I
There's a
guess
flip side to that too, actually. In 2013, if I remember rightly, I hired a new graduate. Um, Graduating with a software engineering degree, wasn't quite sure what he wanted to do, and I hired him as a tester. And the condition was that he could do some testing for a little bit, and if at the end of his probation he found it wasn't right for him, he was quite open to me that he might move on. And I was open to him that we didn't necessarily have an engineering role, but he joined us. Hugely impressive. Within a month or two, it was clear that I really wanted to keep him. On the flip side, within a month or two, he decided he loved testing and he wanted a career in
yeah,
testing. And he
yeah,
wanted to focus on being a tester and pursue the qualifications in that area and work through and pursue that. So he's to this day still working as a tester and
yeah.
really enjoying that, and pivoted from software engineering.
Amazing. I mean,
So
I guess it depends
it
whether you like
worked both.
building or breaking things, really, isn't it?
Yeah, he was very detail oriented, and I think he enjoyed really digging in and understanding things. And that's a great approach for a tester to have.
For sure. And then I guess one final thing. Obviously, not only have you done this, you've also been like a hiring manager for a number of years. If someone was to come to you with like one of your solutions, like having done as like their thing, that they're going to be like, this is my example. If someone asked
Mhm.
them for example of something they've done one of your solutions. What, as a hiring manager, first of all, what would you think of someone that's gone and done a solution on their own? And second, like what particular things within there what would you first be looking at, like in terms of like, oh, have they put tests in, how long have they spent on it, what does it look like all of that kind of stuff, like how would you want it to be packaged up from a point of, is it like just a GitHub repo, like, and how would you want that to look like, and what makes it an easy and good application to look like from you as a hiring manager's point of view?
Cool. So the first part of that, I would be really impressed because again, whether it's one of my coding challenges or building their own business or contributing to an open source project, showing that interest, showing that initiative, showing that you can be self-directed, that is always going to make you stand out over the person that's just finished whatever training they've done and then sat and waited for a job to fall in their lap. So showing that passion and initiative is always going to be valuable. If they come along then and say, I've done this open source project, or I've done one of your coding challenges, or I've contributed to open source, or I've started my own business, and here's the GitHub repo you can see. What's always great is seeing a GitHub repo, because then you can dig into the code and you can understand it. And instead of giving them some kind of DSA test or an artificial test, you can look at real world code and ask questions and have a discussion. And you can dig into it and you can say, well, why did you choose this? Why did you pick this coding challenge? Or why did you pick this open source project? What interests you about it? What did you learn from it? And we can dig through the code and say, well, why did you do it this way? Have you thought about that? And so it makes it easier then to have a conversation and really dig in and get to know how they think, how they work, what they value, where their experience is really at. So that would all be good. Get a repo that somebody can see and dig into is really useful. The things that would really make you stand out would be having a good README, having good documentation, having tests, maybe using GitHub Actions and building some kind of CI or CD pipeline, depending on whether it's appropriate for the project, linking out to any relevant documentation. So if you build something like a network protocol thing, link to the RFC or whatever specifies it, and make it as close to being production ready and usable as possible, and show that you're thinking about what makes a good project.
For sure. I was speaking to someone else about this a couple of weeks ago, and it's almost like doing a maths exam, right? Like the end product is obviously important, but like so much of it is about showing you're working and why you did it, and being able to talk around why you chose that project, what you would have done next, like all of that kind of stuff. So to be able to have something like that that's clear for someone to look through, it makes a natural first interview for you as well, rather than being like, why do you want to work here, like all of this. You'd be like, oh, I looked at your project, like it's cool, like I can see what you did. And like you said, it's just a natural thing and something for you to talk about, which you should know a lot about, because obviously you've spent like 3, 4, 5
Yeah,
weeks, whatever it is, building it, and you should be able to talk passionately about it, which is one of the biggest things, and probably one of the nicest first interviews that you could have with someone, is to talk
definitely.
passionately about a project that you've actually worked on.
Yeah, can you come and tell my son that about the working out?
Uh,
I spend my life shouting at him like, don't just put the answer down, put the working out
yeah,
down.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah,
Oh,
no, that's as you say, that will give you the best interview experience, because interviewing can be intimidating. Lots of people don't like it, and it can feel like you're being quizzed or tested. Where instead of having random questions like, "Do you know this about JavaScript? What have you done?" If somebody can sit down and talk about your project, you're going to understand it. You're going to feel intimately knowledgeable with it. You should feel comfortable with it. It's going to be a lot easier conversation to have, and it will be more of a conversation because it's something you know about and feel comfortable than it will be a quiz. And most of us perform better that way when we're comfortable.
for sure. And like you said, particularly at like the junior level, it's very much like working out where people are at and how well they can be given feedback and take instruction and like think about things logically and all that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily are they 10 out of 10 on like this particular skill. It's like where are they at? Can they describe how they did it? Would they be good at taking feedback? Can they talk through their methodology, all of that kind of stuff, as opposed to anything else? So actually having something that you know well to talk through would give a real good interview from both sides.
Yeah, and personally, I like to see it when junior developers can explain why they made their choices, because they may have less experience than some of us in the industry, but quite often they've got interesting new perspectives. They've got things to add. Or if they can say, well, I chose this and this is why, that can start an interesting discussion. And I've learned as much from saying, well, why did you do it that way? Have you thought about this? Some of their answers have helped me either learn something I didn't know or help me better understand how I explain to somebody else and how I can educate somebody else and mentor them. So it's a useful experience on both sides, and they should really focus on that discussion and try and treat it a bit more like peers. And again, it's easier to feel that when it's your first job. It's easier to feel more like a peer and have that equal conversation if you've got something to show.
Yeah, for sure. And then one final thing, you mentioned getting involved in like pro bono work, finding open source projects and stuff like that. If anyone doesn't know where to go to find that, like where would you recommend looking?
So if you Google "good first issue," that will bring you a lot of open source projects on things like GitHub that have tagged tickets as good first issues. So they're the things you can jump into. And the great thing about that is if you pick a well-known project and you get it accepted, you'll have contributed to something that a lot of developers use. One of the junior developers I worked with a couple of years ago, in I think his first week in the role, he contributed to AWS's CDK, and he's now got submissions in CDK, and
So what?
millions of developers around the world are using that code. So that's something that's quite good that he can talk about. For pro bono work, look for a local charity. Find a small thing that's local that needs a bit of help, and maybe do something for them. Build a website for a local band or a local school or something that needs it. Help them out. Maybe look for a local business that wants a website and offer to do it for them as paid work and do some freelance work, but get some experience. So have something you can show that you've done and that you can talk about an outcome that you created. And maybe if you help a small local business get online, you didn't just build a website or you didn't just get them on Shopify. You enable them to reach an outcome, which is more customers, more revenue, and you can talk about that and have something you've created value.
And also you've got like someone as a reference as to what you're like to
Yeah,
work with and have worked for you, which is huge as well when entering the, because that's the biggest thing is like you said, getting the first 6-12 months under your belt and then having somewhere that has employed you like gives everyone else trust, and someone that's employed you
yeah,
gives everyone else trust. And just having it, even like you said, if it you do it for free or you do it for a very small amount, you go find it yourself. It might be a cousin's baby shower needs a website for it or something like that. Like if you go and do something like you can, and you've got something, you can show a real world application behind it, and then there's someone that can be like, oh yeah, they did that, they were great. Like that's all a lot of the time people are looking for, something
yeah,
that they can look at that is relevant and real world. And then someone that can be like, oh yeah, they weren't an arsehole. Like they were quite good to work with. It's kind of like the minimum barrier to entry, really, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. And it all these little things just give you that step ahead of the other candidates in the pool.
Amazing. Well, John, thank you so much. I'll tag you in all of the posts on LinkedIn and obviously put your newsletter out there. If anyone wants to reach out to you, like, what is LinkedIn the best place for you? Or
Yep, LinkedIn's the best place.
amazing. Well, thank you so much, John. Really, really appreciate your time. And yeah, I'll speak to you again soon.
Okay, likewise, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.